I knew something was dead wrong the second I got that calendar invite labeled Strategic Realignment Discussion. That's corporate speak for we're about to blow up your life. I'm Warren Sheffield, 48 years old, and I'd been keeping Whitfield Defense Solutions compliant with federal regulations for 16 years. Combat engineer in Iraq back in 2003, then straight into defense contracting when I got back. Same mission, different uniform. The coffee was still hot when Bryce Whitfield strolled into my office like he owned the place. Well, technically he did. Daddy's boy, fresh out of whatever business school teaches you to destroy things with PowerPoint. His handshake felt like grabbing a dead fish. No calluses, no strength. I'd been through 3 company reorganizations, budget cuts that would make an accountant weep, and that nightmare audit in 2018 where we had to prove every paperclip purchase. I kept us clean. 0 findings, 0 flags. I was the guy who translated government gibberish into procedures people could actually follow. Which is why I nearly laughed when Bryce clicked through his presentation and said, "We're implementing a digital-first compliance framework. I've heard enough consultant garbage to know what that means. They're replacing experience with software and hoping nobody notices the difference." Bryce had this smug little grin after every slide like he didn't believe his own nonsense but was too proud to stop performing. Then he hit me with the kill shot. "No offense, Warren, but your methods are pretty old school for where we're headed. No offense." Like telling a bomb disposal expert his techniques are outdated right before handing the job to a kid with a YouTube tutorial. I didn't react, didn't argue, just crossed my arms and asked, "Is this a formal position change?" HR looked at me like I'd asked if penguins pay taxes. "It's transitional," they said. "We're exploring new operational models." Within 48 hours, my office got reassigned to some consultant named Miranda who wore conference badges like jewelry, and I found myself sitting at the front desk. The front desk, reception is crucial, Bryce explained with a wink. First impressions matter. I smiled, nodded, and printed a fresh copy of my employment contract. Here's the thing about being underestimated, it's infuriating when you're young, but when you've got experience, real experience, it becomes fuel. I watched the chaos unfold from behind that desk like a general observing enemy movements. People whispered around me, interns looked at me like I had some tragic backstory. Meanwhile, Bryce strutted around like he'd invented breathing. He replaced our in-house counsel with some guy he met at a networking event who called himself Wade Palmer and drafted contracts like he'd learned law from watching TV courtroom dramas. Every document that came out of legal read like it was written by someone who'd skimmed Wikipedia once. But here's what they missed. I was still listed as the primary contract officer of record on our biggest deal, the $340 million DCAA contract that kept the lights on. You don't just yank that designation away with a memo and a smile. My certified procurement officer credentials were set to expire in 30 days, and my assistant Linda was supposed to handle the renewal paperwork. Sweet kid, but overwhelmed doesn't begin to cover it. When the reminder email popped up, I looked at that renewal link and thought about Bryce explaining federal spending to the founder's old secretary like she hadn't lived through 4 different administrations. For the first time in 16 years, I didn't click that link. Bryce called it a strategic sync, but it felt more like amateur hour at the comedy club. Glass-walled conference room, 9 a.m. sharp. I showed up on time because I wanted to see if he'd flinch when I walked in. He didn't. Just grinned like a used car salesman, gesturing to the chair across from him like he was granting me an audience. "Warren," he said, lacing his fingers like some discount business guru. "You've been here a long time, a real institutional memory. But as we pivot toward a more agile, technology-enabled model, we need to optimize roles that are, let's say, certification-heavy but velocity-light." Certification-heavy but velocity-light. The man just told a federal compliance officer that knowing federal regulations was a problem. I stared at him, said nothing. "Let him dig his own hole. We've decided to transition you into a more customer-facing role. You'll still be interfacing with stakeholders, just in a different context." Customer-facing role. He demoted a federal compliance specialist to a door greeter and acted like he'd handed me a promotion. I glanced out the window where a maintenance guy was fixing a broken light fixture with more dignity than this conversation held. Bryce must have sensed the silence getting heavy because he pushed forward. "Look, your alphabet soup of certifications is impressive, but AI can handle 80% of compliance workflows now. Risk assessments, audit trails, threshold validations, it's all automated. We've built a new contract operations team that's agile, cross-functional, and way less bureaucratic." I smiled, which for me was basically arming a grenade. "That's a significant operational change," I said evenly. "I'll need that documented." His smirk faltered. "Well, it's more of a fluid reassignment. HR will circle back with the details." I nodded slowly. Great, I'll wait for the formal reporting structure and role definition in writing. That was the first crack in his confidence. Bryce didn't like people asking for documentation. Paper trails make amateurs nervous. HR sent nothing that day. Nothing the next day either. Just vague emails about interim support structures and temporary cross-functional allocation. Translation. They were trying to demote me without legally triggering a demotion. By the end of the week, my system access started disappearing. The compliance database I'd built over 6 years, gone. My editing privileges in the contract management system revoked. I couldn't even log into the platform I'd personally selected and configured. Meanwhile, the new contract ops team was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. One of them asked me if FAR clauses were like tax codes but for procurement. Another confused a deliverables list with a shipping manifest. These were the people now managing our $340 million lifeline. I watched them from the front desk, smiled when they stumbled past, then opened the tactical notebook I'd started carrying. Not for show, for intelligence gathering. Day 3, system access revoked. Legal sites organizational restructuring. Day 6, Bryce's buddy Wade drafts memo classifying me as administrative support, external relations. Day 8, still no formal title change documentation. Linda asks if I want to renew my CPO certification. I tell her, let's wait and see what the new structure looks like. It was like watching a controlled demolition in reverse. Instead of precise planning, they were randomly pulling support beams and hoping the building wouldn't collapse. They thought I was background noise now, but every mistake they made circled back to one critical fact. My name was still on the primary contract. And the Defense Contract Audit Agency doesn't care about your org charts or your PowerPoint presentations. They care about who holds the active certification. The beautiful part, I didn't need to sabotage anything. They were doing it for me. The front desk gave me a perfect observation post for watching 16 years of careful work get shredded by people who thought compliance was just another app you could download. The new team set up shop in what they'd renamed the Innovation Hub, complete with a whiteboard that said who owns risk, like it was a philosophical puzzle they were too scared to solve. Every day brought fresh disasters. Interns carrying compliance binders upside down, asking questions like, do we still need the old federal forms? And what's a DCAA? One nervous engineer leaned over my desk while waiting for his visitor badge and whispered, they don't even know what DFARS means, like he was confessing a crime. The thing about being removed from the decision-making process is that people forget you ever had any power. They assume you've been scrubbed from every system, wiped clean like an old hard drive, but federal databases don't forget. I still had my login credentials for the DCAA portal because officially nothing had changed. On a quiet Thursday morning, while pretending to troubleshoot a broken badge printer, I logged in. My name was right there, Warren Sheffield, Primary Contract Officer, active on Contract W74 Vol 8H119D0024. I clicked the Certification Status tab. My CPO credentials were set to expire in 19 days. 19 days. That's when it all clicked into place. Not a trap I had to build. The trap was already written into the contract language from our last renewal cycle. It clearly stated that all active defense contractors must maintain an up-to-date primary contract officer holding current CPO certification, or the entire agreement becomes subject to immediate suspension upon review. There was only one name in that clause, mine. I hovered my cursor over the renewal button. 30 seconds of clicking, a payment, a digital signature, and everything would continue as normal. Smooth sailing for Bryce and his gang of consultants. Instead, I closed the tab and leaned back in my chair. Around me, the office buzzed with artificial urgency. Misprinted documents, interns running coffee orders, consultants huddled in corners talking about optimization frameworks. I watched it all like a nature documentary about corporate dysfunction. Bryce was busy preparing for the compliance review like he was about to pitch a startup on Shark Tank. I overheard him telling Wade that he wanted to dazzle the feds with our modernization narrative. His idea of audit prep was printing PowerPoints in landscape mode and wearing a tighter tie. He strutted around with the confidence of someone who'd never been audited and thought material breach was just a fancy way to say oops. He even called an all-hands meeting where he made everyone repeat audit ready like some kind of corporate prayer. Nobody noticed that I was quietly printing personal copies of the contract terms and filing them in my desk drawer. Nobody asked why I was suddenly documenting timestamps and tracking edit histories. Nobody noticed that Linda, now supposedly reporting to Wade, was visibly sweating when people asked her basic questions about procurement officer responsibilities. 19 days became 18, then 17. Each day ticked by like a countdown nobody else could hear. But I heard it loud and clear. This wasn't sabotage. Sabotage requires action. This was physics. A weight left hanging too long eventually falls. I just made sure the rope stayed exactly where they'd left it. The office turned into a circus overnight. Bryce must have bet someone he could run a federal contract operation using only interns' energy drinks and motivational quotes from LinkedIn. Suddenly, we had consultants crawling everywhere, sharp-dressed types with expensive laptops, clicking around like they could manifest compliance through sheer force of jargon. They kept saying things like, "Let's sandbox the risk matrix and we're repackaging the audit narrative for strategic alignment." I watched one try to convert a vendor qualification log into a pie chart using Excel's auto-format feature, then present it to Wade like he'd discovered fire. Wade actually applauded. I'm not kidding. There was applause for a pie chart made from critical compliance data. My daughter Emily called that night from Virginia Tech, asking about tuition for next semester. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart," I told her. "Dad's got it handled." And for the first time in months, that wasn't a lie. Meanwhile, my bulletproof audit documentation had been optimized into color-coded binders with titles like DCAA engagement assets and contract journey mapping. They'd added a section called Our Culture that included a quote from Bryce: "Integrity is just efficiency with ethics." I wrote that one down. Seemed like something I might need to remember later. The LinkedIn message hit my inbox while I was pretending to fix the lobby printer. Simple, direct, from a DCAA agent I'd worked with before, professional guy, no nonsense type. Just confirming you'll be attending the certification review meeting. There it was. My heart didn't race or skip. It just locked into place like a bolt sliding home. He wasn't asking out of courtesy. He was confirming what the system told him. Warren Sheffield was still the primary contract officer. My name was still in the database. I paused, looked at the blinking cursor, thought about Bryce's last team meeting where he'd high-five someone for creating a compliance checklist in Canva. Then I typed back, "I'll be present." That was it, nothing more. I closed the message and went back to my coffee. Let them rehearse their presentations and string together more buzzwords than a TED Talk. Let them build their house of laminated cards. I wasn't lifting a finger to stop them because federal audits don't care about your graphics or your inspirational quotes. They care about documentation. They care about certifications. They care about compliance. And unfortunately for Whitfield Defense Solutions, I was still the compliance. Roy Jackson, our security guard, stopped by my desk that afternoon. Fellow veteran, served in Afghanistan. "Good man. This place feels different," he said quietly, adjusting his badge. "Not the same outfit you signed on with, is it?" I looked up from my notebook. "No, Roy, it's not." He nodded once, understanding passing between us without another word. Some things you don't need to explain to someone who's been in the service. The final week before the audit was pure theater. Bryce brought in a crisis communication specialist, some woman in a $500 blazer who kept talking about narrative management and stakeholder messaging. She actually suggested we create a hashtag for the audit, a hashtag for a federal compliance review. I watched Wade take notes like she was revealing the secrets of the universe. Linda cornered me in the break room on Wednesday. "Warren, I keep getting questions about your certification status. People are asking if it's current." She was nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Sweet kid, caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I wasn't sure, that they should ask HR." Smart answer. I patted her shoulder. "You did good, Linda. That's exactly what you should have said." The new contract ops team was spiraling. Mason, their lead analyst, looked like he hadn't slept in days. I overheard him on the phone with someone, probably his girlfriend, saying, "I don't know what I'm doing." "I don't think anybody knows what we're doing." He was right. They'd been handed the keys to a $340 million operation without a manual, a map, or even a basic understanding of what the machine actually did. Thursday evening, I got a call from my ex-wife, Janet. Emily said, "You told her not to worry about tuition." "Warren, if something's happening at work, I need to know." The divorce agreement, I cut her off gently. "Janet, everything's fine, better than fine. Emily's education is secure. That's a promise." There was silence on the line. Janet knew my voice well enough to read between the words. "Okay," she said finally. "But if you need anything, if this gets complicated, it won't," I told her. Not for us. Friday afternoon brought the pre-audit chaos to a crescendo. The Innovation Hub looked like a war room staffed by people who learned strategy from motivational posters, whiteboards covered in flowcharts that made no sense, laptops overheating from too many PowerPoint presentations running simultaneously. And in the center of it all, Bryce pacing like a general who'd just realized he'd brought water balloons to a gunfight. I watched Miranda, the consultant, try to explain federal audit procedures to Wade using a metaphor about customer journey mapping. Wade nodded earnestly, taking notes, while Linda sat in the corner looking like she wanted to disappear into the wall. The whole scene reminded me of something from Iraq, that moment when you realize the briefing you got doesn't match the reality on the ground, but you're too far committed to change course. Steve Rodriguez from Local 1776 called me around 5 p.m. Warren, I've been hearing things about your situation. If you need union representation for a wrongful demotion claim, I appreciated the offer. Steve's good people, been fighting for workers longer than most of these consultants have been alive. Thanks, Steve, I'll keep that in mind. But I think this is going to resolve itself pretty soon. He laughed. That sounds ominous coming from you. These corporate types getting a lesson in consequences? Something like that, I said. The weekend felt like the calm before the storm. I spent Saturday with Emily, drove up to Blacksburg to take her and a couple friends to dinner. College kids, talking about their majors, their dreams, their plans to change the world. Emily was studying engineering, just like her old man. Dad, you seem different lately, she said as we walked across campus. More relaxed or something. I looked around at the students, the brick buildings, the future taking shape in real time, just feeling like things are falling into place, sweetheart. Sunday, I did what I always do before a big operation. I prepared. Pressed my good suit, the navy one I wore to important meetings, polished my boots. Checked my notebook one more time, making sure every date, every email, every conversation was documented. In Iraq, we called it pre-combat checks. Same principle applied here. The certification reminder email came through Sunday evening. Final notice, expires at midnight tonight unless renewed. I looked at it for a long time, cursor hovering over the renewal link. One click and this whole thing disappears. Bryce keeps his job. The consultants keep their contracts. Everything continues as if competence doesn't matter, as if 16 years of institutional knowledge can be replaced by enthusiasm in software. I closed the laptop without clicking anything. Monday morning, audit day, I arrived at the office an hour early. Same routine I'd followed for every important review over the past 16 years. Coffee first, then a quick walk around the building to check that everything looked professional. The cleaning crew had done good work over the weekend. The place looked sharp, but instead of heading to conference room B like I used to, I took my place at the front desk, my observation post, my command center. The office was electric with nervous energy. Consultants swarmed like bees around a hive made of PowerPoints and fragile confidence. Bryce floated past with a double espresso and a brittle smile, patting shoulders and barking encouragement. Today's just a formality, people. The first external badge went to a man in a gray suit with a DCAA pin, Glenn Morrison. We'd worked together on 3 previous audits. Quiet, thorough, all business. Our eyes met as I handed him the visitor sticker. He nodded once, professional courtesy, but I caught something else. Recognition. He knew the face behind this desk. He didn't ask what I was doing here. He didn't need to. Conference room B filled quickly. Bryce, Wade, 3 consultants, 2 analysts who looked like they were about to pitch an app, and Linda, who appeared ready to throw up. The door closed. For 20 minutes, I could hear the occasional muffled laugh from upstairs, chairs shifting, the squeak of markers on whiteboards. Then silence, not the comfortable quiet of a meeting going well. The heavy, dense silence of something going very wrong. It started with footsteps, fast ones. The elevator dinged. Linda emerged first, pale as paper, clutching a binder like a life preserver. Behind her, slower, came Glenn. His face was unreadable, but his pace was deliberate. The pace of a man who just delivered bad news and was giving people time to process it. More footsteps followed. Bryce, Wade, the consultant team looking like they'd been hit by a truck. Nobody spoke. They moved like chess pieces, suddenly realizing they were in the wrong game. Bryce's usual swagger was gone. His smile erased, his tan looking 2 shades lighter under the fluorescent lights. Finally, I heard Glenn's voice from the conference room. Not angry, not loud, just final. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught the tone. I knew that tone better than my own reflection. It was the sound of a system functioning exactly as designed. The sound of consequences arriving on schedule. Primary contract officer, Warren Sheffield. Glenn's voice carried down the hallway. Not a question, just a statement read from official documentation. His certification expired at midnight. As of this morning, contract W74 Vol 8HH 19D0024 is void. Boom. The silence after that wasn't silence at all. It was the sound of a $340 million contract evaporating into thin air. Then chaos erupted. Legal tore through binders, like answers might be hidden under paper clips. Linda dropped her laptop bag. One of the consultants actually said, "Can we just update the system real quick?" And I swear I heard Glenn respond, "This is a federal database, not Google Docs." That's when Charles Whitfield's voice exploded through the conference room speakerphone from whatever golf resort he'd retired to. "What the hell do you mean void? We just renewed. How is this possible? Bryce, explain this." Bryce stammered something about transitional oversight, then something about operational efficiency, then tried to throw around words like provisional and temporary like they were shields. But it was too late. The dam had cracked and federal regulations were flooding in. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, tucked my notebook under my arm, walked down the corridor toward the sounds of corporate collapse. I could feel the change in air pressure as I approached the room, like walking toward a storm that had already hit. I stepped through the doorway. Every eye turned to me. Bryce looked like he'd seen a ghost with an outstanding debt. I walked past him, past Wade, past the consultant team, still trying to process what had just happened, and stopped in front of Glenn. "Mr. Morrison," I said, "thank you for your time today." He nodded once, professional to the end. I pulled a single envelope from my notebook. "This is my formal resignation, effective immediately." My voice carried to every corner of the room. Bryce opened his mouth, but I turned to Wade. "I've retained copies of all correspondence documenting my removal from active duties and system access revocation. If you need testimony regarding the timeline, I'll be available by subpoena only." Dead silence. Even Charles Whitfield on speakerphone said nothing. I walked to the door, turned back one last time, and allowed myself the smallest, most professional smile I'd worn in months. "Good luck with your modernization initiative." Then I left, not stormed out, left. Because after the federal lockdown kicked in, there wouldn't be an office to storm out of. By 6 p.m. that evening, the lights at Whitfield Defense Solutions went dark. Federal protocols triggered the moment Glenn's report hit the system. Emails frozen, contracts quarantine, badge, access revoked company-wide. The $340 million pipeline that Bryce had treated like a guaranteed revenue stream became a federally sealed investigation site. Someone from the Office of Inspector General flagged the certification discrepancy within hours. With my name embedded in every critical contract clause, the system did exactly what it was designed to do: protect government interests by shutting down non-compliant operations. Bryce was escorted out Tuesday morning with a cardboard box and a legal packet thicker than his business plan. The contract ops team suspended pending investigation. The consultants vanished like expensive smoke. Wade probably updating his resume with creative descriptions of his leadership experience. And me? I was at Murphy's Tavern, nursing a bourbon and watching the world keep turning outside the window. My phone had been buzzing all day, recruiters who'd heard about Whitfield's situation, defense contractors who remembered my work, companies that understood the difference between compliance theater and actual federal contract management. By Wednesday, I had 4 job offers, real offers, from companies that paid for competence instead of trying to replace it with apps and good intentions. Companies where 16 years of experience was an asset, not a liability. Emily called Thursday night. "Dad, I heard about your company on the news. Are you okay?" I looked out my kitchen window at the neighbors' kids playing basketball in their driveway. "I'm more than okay, sweetheart. Your tuition's covered, and Dad's got some interesting opportunities ahead. You sound like you planned this whole thing." Sometimes when people don't respect the system stops respecting them back. Listen, if you're out there working for someone who thinks your experience doesn't matter, who believes software can replace judgment, who treats loyalty like a liability, pay attention. The system has rules for a reason. Those rules protect competent people and expose the frauds. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do, it's what you don't do. Sometimes you just step back and let physics handle the rest. Your experience is worth something. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry. I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here, Maybe sorrow feels like home, so I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger, now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection, now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll rise again. I'll rise alone